Okay, just a very short video to wish you all a happy Easter and to remind you of a couple of things with respect to Christianity, Catholicism, and so on. I've finished a book which I need to sort of get edited and clean up. I've written this book like probably 3 times now in 2 different versions, and I'm still not happy with it. I don't know if I'll ever be happy with it. But it's an important book to get out there because it sort of describes a little bit the truth of Christianity compared to the fakery of Churchianity, which will turn off any sane human being, right, from Christianity. If you're a normal, logical, thinking person that can actually still do logic, which is quite rare now if you're under, 50 years old or so, because they don't teach you how to think logically anymore. They don't teach you proper maths anymore. They don't teach you statistics. They don't teach you, real history. So it's, although it's questionable whether we ever were taught any real history, but anyway, at least, most of the history we learned was backed up by certain evidence. Now it's, it's communism all the way down, and it's destroy the past, forget what happened, know nothing, have no history, have no family history, don't know where you're coming from, that sort of thing. But if you're a normal person with a somewhat logical bent, which is pretty much unavoidable for you to be of a secular scientific sort of mindset if you've been born, from 1960 on, so pretty much, because that's what's got beamed at us constantly. You're gonna, and you come across the average person's idea of what Christianity is. If you're a normal thinking human being with an IQ that's a little bit above room temperature, you're gonna reject it. You're gonna reject Christianity because it's not Christianity, it's Churchianity. It's a lie. Everything you've been told about it is a lie, and it's got nothing to do with actual Christianity, with real Christianity. Now, I personally got baptized into the Catholic Church only in 2017, on Ascension Day of 2017. So, not quite yet 2 years ago. And why did I get baptized into Catholic Church? I mean, because most people, when I say Catholic Church, most people assume Bergoglio and the Vatican and the average priests that you see in so-called Catholic churches. But almost all of those guys are complete fakes. They're not valid clerics. Bergoglio is not a pope. Neither is Ratzinger, neither any of the popes before him. I've made a couple of videos on this before, so go and look at those if you want to know the reasons for that. But basically, the Catholic Church has not been, run by a legitimate pope since 1958. There has been no, and any cleric, regardless of grade, right, whether they're a priest or a bishop, and remember, in the Catholic Church, there are only priests and bishops. Cardinal, archbishop, pope, these are worldly ranks for a world hierarchy in the world. It's got nothing to do with spiritual hierarchy. The pope is a bishop just like any other bishop, and priests are priests. That's it. The holy orders, there are 7, I think, if I remember right, there are 7 holy orders, and that's basically it. The first 4 minor ones are before you become a priest, and then you become a priest, then you become and you can become a bishop after that, and so on. But essentially, what people think is the Catholic Church is no longer the Catholic Church, and it's very interesting what's happening around the world now. I mean, it's Easter Sunday. We've had 2 or 3 bombs go off in Sri Lanka on 3 different churches and hotels, killing over 138 people at present count, injuring more than 500, and think of the devastation to the families of those people. It affects thousands of people. And, Muslim terrorists did that. Notre Dame has burnt down, apparently by itself, because there's no workmen on site. The renovation didn't happen, it wasn't the cause of this fire. There's apparently what appears to be a strange individual on in the church while it's catching fire, and he's definitely not a fireman. And there have been literally hundreds of churches, more than 2 a day, in France, vandalized, set on fire, desecrated with excrement and so on. And again, by Muslims. It's not politically correct to say so, but that's what's happening, and it's not difficult to figure out. It's not difficult to know. Islam has tried to take over Christendom since its inception. It's been very successful in the Middle East, having wiped out all the Christian churches and people that used to live there. And it's now trying to do so in Europe, aided by the global homos that want to import cheap labor and destroy the family unit and so on, just so that those 2 or 3 globalist bankers have more money and more power over everybody. But the interesting thing is that people were really upset and saddened by the burning down of Notre Dame. I was slightly invigorated because I thought, well, first of all, it's a just punishment. It's an absolutely clear sign from above. No one was injured, and it's like, I'm going to burn down your church because you don't deserve this. You're not protecting it. You're not looking after it. Notre Dame, as it was, I think, on Canon 212, and Canon 212 are, rose-tinted glasses guys compared to me, because they still think that Ratzinger is Pope or whatever, one of those people. But there was a statement, I don't know who made it, but it's really apt, and it said Notre Dame was not built for random tourists and Francis Catholics to come and oogle over. It was built for Catholic men to remember and the majesty of Jesus Christ and the Catholic faith, and as a symbol, of Christianity throughout Christendom. So, and that's absolutely true. If you don't protect it, you lose it. It's the same with anything. If you don't keep fit, if you don't train, you're going to lose your fitness. If you don't protect your family, you're going to lose it. If you believe the lies, you're going to lose it. And I'm an expert at screwing up. I've made mistakes that most people wouldn't recover from. I'm kind of like the Terminator of fuck-ups. I just keep coming back. But it's I can say these things with some authority, really, because I've got 2 divorces behind me. I believed many of the secular lies for a long time, because I was fooled too, I was lied to. We're all being lied to, but Christianity is true. Christianity is real. And on this Easter Sunday, I want you to remember something. There's most of the people watching these videos are probably not Catholics, and certainly I doubt there's a single, except maybe my wife, and I don't think she even watches many of my videos anyways, but there aren't what I call real Catholics watching this video, most likely. Most of you are probably Protestants or agnostic or atheists or whatever. The thing is, I was an atheist for a long time, and that's this new book I've written called Believe, and hopefully I'll put it out soon. It's not perfect, I'm not really happy with it, but it just needs to get out there. And it explains the truth of that stuff in a very sort of hammer in your face type of, as is my general style, way. So it's important that you realize, if you're kind of an agnostic and you sort of believe that there probably is some intelligence behind creation, but probably doesn't give a crap about you personally and so on, which is, I was there for a long time. I get you, I understand where you're coming from, but that's because you've been lied to. You've been lied to about reality. If you understood Christianity properly, if you pick up the Bible and you start reading it, you will see that it's very different from what you've been told it is. And there's stuff in the Bible that I certainly never heard any priest talk about, but it's in there and it's very clear. It's not that difficult. Just start reading it. And if you don't want to go through the whole Old Testament and all that weird stuff about, the prophecies and all that, fine, just read the New Testament. That's small, right? It's just a little book, go for it. Just read it. See what Jesus said himself. Check his words out. And it's interesting. It's very, very interesting, because it's an absolutely rebellious book in a certain sense. It demythologizes, is that a word? Yeah, demystifies, whatever, the mythologies of the Churchians. Say, oh, you should always turn the other cheek. Look at the context that was written in. And remember one thing, whether you're a Protestant or an Orthodox or whatever, assuming you're not a Catholic and that you think therefore that the Catholic Church is wrong, a lie, whatever, just remember something. First of all, even if you want to deny the existence of it as much as you want, the Catholic Church was there from the beginning. Okay, same as the Orthodox Church and same as the Copts. So Catholic, Orthodox, and Coptic churches split gently into three different things, but they were there from the beginning. They were there from the start. So if you're a Protestant, you're kind of mistaken on history. But anyway, let's skip over that. More importantly, I believe, Christendom would not exist if it was not for Catholics and Catholic fighters. Okay, the Islamic conquering of the Middle East and parts of Europe, and happened relatively quickly. By the year 1000, they were taking over. They had kidnapped, raped, murdered, and got into slavery millions of Europeans. Millions, literally millions. And we're talking about when the population of the whole planet was well under 1 billion. And it was only in the First Crusade when Urban II, which was a pope when there was another anti-pope, there was the mess of the Catholic Church where the popes were fighting each other to see who was the real pope and so on. But Urban II, they gave a speech in what is present-day France, and he said, it's time. These guys are starting to wipe us out. We got to fight back. And Christian knights literally sold all their possessions and with their families started walking towards Jerusalem, marching to war. This is in the year 1095, and the spirit of those people is not in question. If you read the real history, and a brilliant book by a guy called Harold Lamb that you should read, it's called The Crusades of Iron Men and the Fire and Iron, something like that. It's called The Crusades by Harold Lamb. It was written in the 1930s or 40s, and awesome book. I mean, that guy must have been a freak because he went to original documentation from both sides of the conflict. An amazing piece of historical work, And then read about the siege of Malta by the Muslims. Again, another brilliant piece of work. I mean, Europe was saved by a couple of hundreds knights. The Knights of Malta fought to the death, pretty much to the last man. These guys were injured. I mean, De Valette was 80 plus years old. I think he was 82, and he fought on the wall, injured, with a serious injury in his leg. He fought in full armor for like half a day just to inspire the troops. This guy was 82 years old or whatever it was. Now that's a man. That is a Catholic. And when the Mohammedans, the Islamists, the Muslims killed the captured Catholic knights, they crucified them or whatever. La Valette got all the Muslim prisoners, had their heads cut off, and shot their heads out of a cannon at them. So that the Muslims knew, you do that to our guys, we're going to do it to yours. That was a Catholic. Now, a couple of provisos, I've got a very simple, complex philosophy. Violence in the name of God is wrong. Always. When people use the words Deus Vult, God's will, to justify acts of violence as though they were God's will, I believe that's blasphemy. Violence in the name of God is wrong and blasphemy. That's what I truly believe. Point number 2, violence in a fallen world is sometimes unfortunately necessary. If somebody comes through your door, tries to kill you because you're a Christian or whatever, just because he wants to rape your wife, turn his head into a pink cloud. I don't care what the laws are or whatever. In Europe now, if a guy breaks into your house trying to kill you and your kids and you kill him, you probably end up in jail. So what? Ain't gonna stop me. If some guy breaks into my house trying to hurt my family, he's gonna die. Tough shit. I don't care what the law says. When the law is wrong, you have to ignore it. In Nazi Germany, when they told you that you need to kill and gas little Jewish children, that was fucking wrong. All right, it was the law, still wrong. If you tell me that it's the law that a guy that breaks into my house with intent to harm my family shouldn't, get killed, if I can catch him alive, fine, but I'm not gonna worry too much about it. And I don't know how many of them there are, and I don't know if his mates are all outside. I'm not gonna wait to find out. You come into my house with evil intent, you're probably gonna die, and I don't care what the law is, and neither should you. If being a Catholic or being a Christian if you think that that means to always submit and to always be a martyr and to let yourself get raped, killed, and so on, if you do that out of a true, genuine belief in non-violence because you're a really good Christian, I take my hat off to you. You know, you're a better person than I am, no doubt. But God loves his warriors too, and they're needed too, because Christendom would not exist if it was not due to armed knights that walked to Jerusalem, putting everything on the line, including their families, and fought and killed and destroyed the Muslim warriors that were trying to take out Christendom. So Christendom exists because of Catholic fighters, okay? That's a fact. That's a historical fact. The fact that it might piss you off because you're a Protestant, or the fact that you might be an Orthodox, and you say, well, the Orthodox fought too. Yeah, they did. But the Orthodox did not fight anywhere near as much and did not protect Christendom anywhere near as much as the Catholics did. The fact that what passes for present-day Catholicism is now a hive of predatory homosexuals and vile, lying, evil scum like Bergoglio and his cardinals is a by the by. That's not the Catholic Church. You've had a bait and switch, you know, since 1958. None of the priests that any priest, any so-called cleric of the so-called Catholic Church that does not denounce openly, publicly, everything related to Vatican II is not a cleric of the Church. Remember that. By canon law, that person has lost their spiritual office the minute they do not intentionally and consciously and publicly denounce everything related to Vatican II as heretic. So now, you know, if you are Catholic, you're kind of panicking maybe and sort of thinking, but then who are the real priests and where are the real priests? Oh, look for them. They're there. They exist. They're still there. We still have priests. We still have real priests. We still have real bishops. They're few when you got to look for them. There's some in Belgium. There's some in Italy. There's quite a few of them in Europe. There's one of them in America at least. You know, there's a bishop that lives in America who's one of these guys. Find out. Don't be lazy. I'm not going to give you everything spoon-fed. I've already told you with most of the stuff anyways. But, you know, if you call yourself a Catholic, figure it out. You say it's your faith and you don't know. You don't know that we've had fake popes since 1958. You don't know why. Or you think, oh no, you can't judge that because you're not the Pope. I don't need to be the Pope, you morons. Anybody that agrees with Vatican II is a heretic. Vatican II is completely heretical. Read the documents. Read them. They're online. They're free. It doesn't cost you anything. So, on this Easter Sunday, I want to remind you all, if you're a Christian, you know, let's forget a little bit about the squabbles between the Orthodox and the Catholics and Copts. I mean, if you're a Copt and you've risked your life to go to Mass every time you do it, I can't say that you're not a Christian. You know, I'm a Catholic, and another thing people don't understand about the Catholic Church is they think, oh, the Catholic Church says you go to hell if you're not a Catholic. Yeah, they do that. And it's also a way to make sure that people follow the right path. The Catholic Church absolutely says that salvation is only assured in the Catholic Church. What they don't tell you, which is, and it's done on purpose, you know, it's not spoken about, it's not said out loud. But the Catholic Church absolutely recognizes that you could be a Protestant, or that you could be an Orthodox, or that you could be a savage in the Amazon that's never even heard the word of Jesus Christ and end up in heaven. Now, what the Catholic Church says, it's unlikely. It's far less likely if you're a Protestant that you end up in heaven than if you're a Catholic that actually follows the Catholic Church properly. And I generally agree with that. And again, look at the fruits. Look at the fruits of the Catholic Church. From its inception till now, it created Christendom, it defended Christendom, it invented the scientific method, pretty much. It created some of the most beautiful, long-lasting art, which are no longer entitled to keep, and therefore it burns down. It created the modern world. Catholic Christianity created Western civilization, pretty much, you know, like without fail that happened. That doesn't mean that, you know, Orthodox are not Christians, or Copts are not Christians, or even, you know, the odd Protestant isn't a Christian. Although, generally speaking, if you want to be right, you know, start from closer to the truth. Now, you could argue, if you're an Orthodox, you could argue that, like, I'm closer to the truth, and, you know, I'm Catholic, and I'm going to say, no, I'm closer to the truth. And to me, that's kind of dumb, you know. The differences in theology between Orthodox Christians, Russian Orthodox Christians, or Greek Orthodox Christians, and original, real Catholics are so rarefied that in my mind they make very little difference. You know, I'm not saying they're not important to people who study this stuff and whatever, but they're not important to me personally. I'm not there yet, you know. And if I'd be a liar if I said they were, because they're not. Maybe one day I'll get to the point where I'm even more zealous about those things, but I'm not there now. And I don't think that I'll probably get there, because it's about intent. It's about your heart's intent. You got to keep two things in mind. We are all in error. You know, even if you're the most stringent adherent to Catholic faith, theology, and dogma, you're still in error. Doesn't matter who you are in error. Every human being on earth is in error. You know, it's only a matter of degree. How wrong are you? Now, there are some Protestants and, you know, those evangelical sort of prosperity gospel guys. I am absolutely convinced that those people belong in hell, because they're absolute liars, scumbags, Churchians, not Christians, and we're told in the Bible that if you're lukewarm, you shall be spat out, literally vomited out from God's grace. Okay, so I don't believe that those people are Christians in any way, shape, or form. And we're warned about this. You know, the road to error is wide, and a lot of people take it. And the road to truth is narrow and hard. So what makes you think that you're on the road that's narrow path? You know, the church exists for a reason. Why do you think there's a church on earth? Why do you think that Jesus said, "On you I built my church"? You know, it's pretty plain reading again, you know. That rock that he built the church on was Peter, you know, Petrus. It means rock. Changed this guy's name from Simon to Rock, you know. It's pretty obvious. It's not like some mystical stuff you got to try and figure out. And Peter was a completely flawed, cowardly fucker. I mean, he denied his Lord 3 times. I like Thomas best because Thomas was the only one of the apostles that said we should follow him and get nailed to a cross together with him. He didn't, so he still chickened out in the end somehow. We don't know that whole story. But he didn't boast so much, and he was, you know, Thomas is the apostle that's closest to my internal feeling, because, you know, he wasn't there when Jesus was around and all the other guys were telling him Jesus has come back from the dead, and he was like, you guys are all fucking high. I'm not going to believe that shit unless I put my hands in his wounds. And lo and behold, Jesus comes up and says, dude, here you go, put your fingers in. And then he was like, oh shit, I'm sorry, I was wrong. You know, and I'm like that. I pretty much, that's kind of how I've lived and kind of how my general psychology tends to go, you know. I'm sure of what I'm sure of until I'm proven completely fucking wrong, and then, hey, the minute I understand I'm wrong, I drop it right there. It doesn't matter. I come in the middle of the most heated argument. The moment I realize that I'm wrong about something, immediately right there, I apologize and I say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And everybody's wrong, you know, plenty of times. So, but I like Thomas because he then went on to spread the gospel, and apparently he died in India, a martyr, in what is present-day Pakistan, actually. And there's a lady, like a kind of a female Indiana Jones, that very few people know about, who found the guy's resting place and then made it into a mosque. And she was literally like hours away from being able to open that, you know, tomb or whatever, to prove it, that whoever's there is actually a Christian. It's Thomas, and the Pakistani government sort of blocked it and made it a mosque, and there's no access to it, and so on and so forth. So I kind of like Thomas the best, but I mean, Peter was the so-called leader of the apostles, the so-called first pope, and so on. And, you know, so we're all flawed, we're all wrong. But why are you gonna, you know, try and start out from as close to the truth as you can, right? I mean, I know Protestants that I believe are true, real Christians. And I also know so-called Catholics that I think are, fake Churchians. A lot of Protestants that are fake Churchians, and I know a few Orthodox that are completely flawed human beings. I don't know. I believe there might be Christians, but a lot of the Orthodox seem to sort of both be Christians and really bad ones. And I relate to them very much because that's pretty much where I'm at. But anyway, the whole point of this Easter Sunday message was they're blowing up your churches, they're burning them down, they're desecrating them. Fight back. And again, just to be absolutely clear, I'm not advocating violence necessarily. I mean, if you're in a war zone, if somebody's trying to threaten you, somebody's trying to kill you, then fight back, defend yourself. I'm not talking about, fighting back can mean simply refusing to comply with the bullshit laws about, LGBTQ, whatever, pedophile crap they're coming up with next, where, oh yes, you have to have your 3-year-old or your 5-year-old get taught about anal sex in school, and you as a parent just have to accept it. No, take your kid out of school, pick it in front of that school. Don't allow that. You don't have to put up with this crap. It's only happening because you're letting it. They're only desecrating churches all over France because they're letting them do that. And yes, the globalists and the elitists and the police and the lawyers and the judges are all on the global homicide. And probably if you stop an arsonist by punching him in the face, you'll probably get arrested. But this is expected. If you're a Christian, you're going to be persecuted. And remember, if we are near the end days, I don't know if we are or not. I believe we're probably getting pretty close. All the signs seem to be there, but nobody knows when that hour will come, including Jesus. So I'm surely not even going to attempt to guess at it, and I don't really care. It'll happen when it'll happen. But we know we're going to be persecuted for being Christians. So what? That's how you know you're over the target, when they're shooting at you. Nobody's going to shoot at you if you're a church and somewhere preaching the prosperity gospel, other than a guy like me. A guy like me is going to be firing your way because he's going to call you a liar, a deceiver, and a fake. Or, you get these idiots that say, oh, well, shut up and go to church. Oh, it doesn't matter which church you go to. It doesn't matter what's being said at the pulpit. It doesn't matter if you go to a Novus Ordo crap, fake, disgusting, invalid mockery of the Mass, where they call Bergoglio Pope. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they say. Of course it matters. If you're going to go to those kind of masses, then stand up at the front and say, this is a lie. Get thrown out. Make them bounce you out of there because you tell the truth. Of course it matters. Go to church and be shut up. No, fuck that. Don't shut up. Go to a church that you respect that has real priests. Create one if you can't find one. Fund the real priests that have got no money, because the real priests, the real Catholic priests, they're poor, they're few, they're far between. Help them. I do. Every time I go to Mass with my priest, I try and give as much money as I can to help them out. Rebuild the church. See if you can organize people, get together, buy one of the many abandoned churches and defend it. Fight back at your politicians and the crappy, useless lies and laws that they're trying to pass. Do you understand? I just saw a film recently. It was a very good film called Highwaymen with Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson. And, never mind Hollywood and the fact that whatever, those actors are people that might not necessarily be that nice in real life or whatever. I don't know. But the film was pretty well made, and it was based on real people and the hunting down and killing of Bonnie and Clyde. And what I didn't know is that Frank, the guy played by Kevin Costner, Frank Hammond, I think is his name, and the other guy were both, pretty religious men. They were one thing that I noticed even before it tells you that in the film is that Kevin Costner character doesn't swear, and and yet he killed a lot of men, And they killed Bonnie and Clyde. I mean, that was an execution, really. But Bonnie and Clyde were pretty evil people, The thing is, being a Christian doesn't mean that you got to be a pussy. You can fight back, and fight back within your means and within your ability to do so. And remember, my 3 rules. Violence in the name of God is wrong. In a fallen world, sometimes balance is necessary. And part 3, thank God I'm a Catholic, because I've got purgatory, you know. So, God's law above human law, that's my thinking. And, you know, you gotta, it's weird, you know, we suddenly in the United Kingdom, we had these rules that little kids, 5-6-year-old kids, are going to be taught against their parents' wishes at school about gay marriage. There's no such thing, you know. Marriage is between a man and a woman. It cannot exist between 2 men or 2 women. That's not marriage. That's just, you know, copulation, mutual masturbation, call it what you want. But, you know, marriage is an institution created by God for Christian human beings to reproduce and have children. That's the purpose of marriage. So, you can't be married, you know, if you're 2 men or 2 women. It doesn't work. And it didn't stop because of Christians, you know, arguing against it. It stopped because the Muslims rioted outside of the schools. And, you know, everybody knows that if you don't sort of go the other way, the Muslims are probably going to burn that school down and start killing the teachers. Everybody knows that the Muslims are willing to do that to protect their ideology, their beliefs. The fact that their beliefs, in my opinion, are completely satanic because it involves a prophet that you know, had sex with a 9-year-old girl as his wife, technically, and murdered people and raped and so on. That's sort of besides the point. The point is the Muslims protect what they believe. And I disagree with their ideology, but you can't help but respect the fact that they do that. You know, they do it in a way that I think is abhorrent and evil, but they do that. You know, it's again the same old story. I'll respect an enemy who is willing to just be my enemy out in the open, clearly tries to kill me every chance he gets. You know, it's the Nazi with a machine gun or the Muslim jihadi charging your house or whatever it is. He's evil, he's wrong, he's mistaken, badly, whatever, but you have to have some kind of respect for him because there's some courage there, there's some principle, however twisted and wrong. What I have zero respect for, and I think are worse than those people, are the so-called Churchians, the so-called moderates that sit behind lines. It's sort of like, oh, well, no, and then they stab you in the back. You know, when you're being attacked by the hordes, they're the guys that say, oh, they're just poor, and then they take out your bullet so you can't fight back. You know, our own politicians, our own so-called lawyers and judges, that gay judge that killed, murdered a little boy, Alfie, in a hospital in England, had him essentially murder the child using legal bullshit to do it. And, you know, that kid was eating on his own and they wouldn't let him eat. They starved him to death, yeah. Because his parents are Catholic and the judge is a complete homosexual through and through. That's what happened. You know, people don't like saying it, oh, well, you know, that's not real. No, that's what happened. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion and I'm voicing my opinion. That's my opinion. Okay, and that's wrong. And I believe that people like that shouldn't be allowed to make tea, all right? Never mind be a judge. Guy's a scumbag. Killed a little kid to justify his own perverse, sick, sexually depraved ideology. That's what happened there. Yeah, so whatever. Anyway, this is my little message to you. Fight back. Speak out. Tell the truth. Don't be intimidated. Tell the truth as you see it. I worked with a Muslim guy for a time, and we're just the two of us in the office, and he was a serious Muslim, you know, and I wasn't even baptized at the time. I was thinking about it, whatever, but I wasn't even baptized at the time. Anyway, and I asked him about his faith, his religion. I asked him about Muhammad having had sex with Aisha when she was 9 years old and how he felt about that. And, you know, his answers were coherent. You know, he basically said, well, if you believe that Muhammad was the prophet, whatever he did was right and just in the eyes of God, and therefore whatever he did was fine. And I asked him about that because I know he had daughters, and I said, well, you know, I'm an old man compared to your kids. What would it be like if I converted to Islam and then said, oh, I can marry your 9-year-old daughter? You know, would you be happy with that? And he said, no, I wouldn't, because you're not the perfect man. You know, you're not Muhammad, sort of thing. And I respect that. And I told him, we're sitting in an office, and, I listened to what he said, and I told him my bits. And it was very respectful, because I told him, I said, I've got some hard questions to ask you that are probably going to offend you or upset you, whatever, but I want to talk about this stuff. I think it's important. Are you okay with that? And he said, yeah, go ahead. So we talked, and we did talk. And after our conversation reached a certain point, I said to him, do you realize that based on what you believe and what I believe, at some point, when and if civilization breaks down, or when and if enough of your people take over things, you are going to have to kill me, because I'm not going to convert to your belief system willingly, or even by force if I can help it. So we're going to be trying to kill each other at some point in the future if this is where we're at. And he agreed. He said, yeah, that's probably correct. That guy is my enemy, but I respect him. And some people have a very difficult time trying to understand this, but that's because if you're not male, if you're not a man, if you don't understand male spaces, to use the modern lingo, you will never get that. I respect that guy. He was a little guy, I'm like 6'2", I'm a pretty big guy, and I've got that kind of face, so maybe I've been told anyway, I'm very intimidating. I'm a nice person. I don't know why people feel that way, it's scary, weird to me, but apparently I'm very intimidating. And this little guy, he was like, I don't know, 5 foot nothing, and he didn't shirk, he wasn't afraid. And he believed what he believed. He prayed 5 times a day. He did his work. He worked hard. I respect that guy. I'll go so far as to say that if he stayed in his Saudi Arabia Islamic country, and I stayed in my zealotous Christian Catholic hardcore country, we wouldn't have a problem. We literally would not have a problem. As long as he stays on his side of the line and I stay on my side of the line. The minute he tries to cross into my side of the line with intentions to subvert my culture, he should be wiped out. And vice versa. And the Muslims do that. There is not a single Catholic or Christian church in Saudi Arabia. If you try and bring a Bible into Saudi Arabia, you're in a hell of a lot of trouble. So why do we allow their mosques in Christendom? Why? So that's basically my message for Easter. Speak out. Rely on your faith, on truth, on your belief, on reality. Be honest, be just. And, remember that if you do any violence, that's on you. I'm not advocating for violence. I don't believe that violence in the name of God is just or correct. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's necessary to protect yourself, defend yourself. But, don't then go around saying I'm advocating violence towards Muslims or whatever. I'm saying fight back in the appropriate, correct way for where you are and where you live and what you're supposed to do. I don't see a need for any violence in my life at the moment. I don't see a need for that. But resist the crappy ideology. And I'll tell you right now that yes, Islam as an ideology has got a huge problems as far as I'm concerned, and I think it's mostly evil. But I've lived for a time in so-called Islamic countries like Kazakhstan, and it's very civilized, extremely civilized, because it's a different type of Islam over there. And it's kind of like, I suppose, the Churchian equivalent of Islam, I don't know. But very civilized people, very kind, very welcoming. So, people are people. Ideology and brainwashed nonsense, it happens to everybody. And in my opinion, the worst enemies of Christianity, Christian faith, Catholics, Orthodox, whatever you want to call it, the worst enemies of that are not the Muslims. It's our own so-called secular, atheist, globalist, predatory, homosexual, global homo elitists. Those are the people we need to get out of those places of power, replace them, throw them out, put them somewhere else, do whatever, jail them for all the illegal, evil shit that they do. And the so-called armed forces, the police, the thugs, you know, the gang called the police that protect them. It's a well-known fact, and there's a 2-hour video by an ex-policeman that started to investigate sex crimes against children. And this guy names some names. There's a 2-hour video of him. He couldn't make any headway because pedophiles in modern European secular societies like England are protected by the police. Now, if you're a policeman and you're watching this and you don't know this, you know, you're in the lower echelons of power in the police force, what kind of person are you? Yeah. If you don't follow up on this stuff, you think I'm a liar, if you think your buddy cops would never do that, okay, look into it. Just look into it. Prove me fucking wrong, alright? And go and look at the videos of the guys that have had their life threatened, have their kids threatened, because they told the truth about how pedophiles in high positions of power are protected. What do you think Jimmy Savile was? How many people knew about Jimmy Savile? Okay? Fight back. Our Lord is risen today. Honor him by telling the truth, by standing firm. That's pretty much my Easter holiday message to my friends, family, and enemies too. Happy Easter to all of you.